Have you ever looked up at the night sky and felt that we are not alone? That somewhere out there, in the bottomless black between the stars, lie secrets capable of turning our entire understanding of reality upside down? Most people dismiss this as science fiction. Scientists speak of probabilities, philosophers of paradoxes. But what if I told you that very recently, our home, our solar system, has started receiving messengers from other worlds? This isn't speculation. These are facts. And the story of these visits is far stranger and more thrilling than any Hollywood blockbuster. Until 2017, all interstellar travel was the stuff of fiction. We lived in the cozy cocoon of our star system, believing that every asteroid and comet we see was born right here, along with the Earth and the Sun. But on October 19th, 2017, everything changed. A telescope in Hawaii detected something incredible. An object moving so fast and on such a strange trajectory that it simply couldn't be one of ours. It came from the outside, from the interstellar void. They named it Oumuamua, which in Hawaiian means a messenger from afar arriving first. And this messenger immediately stumped scientists. Imagine a cigar, or if you prefer, a thin, elongated spindle, several hundred meters long, hurtling through space and tumbling on its axis. We had never seen anything like it. All our asteroids are just shapeless space potatoes. But this one, it was different, too regular, too strange. But its shape was just the beginning. The biggest mystery of Oumuamua was its behavior. After flying past the sun, instead of slowing down due to gravity, it began to accelerate. It was as if it had switched on its own engine. Comets sometimes do this when solar heat vaporizes ice and gas from their surface, creating a jet propulsion effect. But Oumuamua had no tail, no gas cloud, no so-called coma. It was perfectly clean, like a piece of metal or rock. So what was pushing it? This question divided the astronomical community. Most tried to find a natural explanation. Perhaps it was a fragment of an exoplanet made of nitrogen ice. Or maybe it was releasing hydrogen, invisible to us, which acted as a propellant. But there was another, far more daring and imaginative hypothesis. It was put forward by none other than Harvard University professor Avi Loeb. He suggested that Oumuamua could be an artificial object, a probe, a scout, or even a spacecraft equipped with a solar sail, catching the pressure of sunlight to accelerate. Just think about it. The first guest from another star system, and it behaves as if it were created by intelligent beings. Oumuamua departed as suddenly as it appeared, leaving us with more questions than answers. It vanished forever from the view of our telescopes, carrying its secret into the darkness. It seemed like a unique encounter, a gift from fate. But just 2 years later, in August 2019, a second guest paid us a visit. It was discovered by amateur astronomer Gennady Borisov, and the object was named in his honor, Comet 2Y/Borisov. At first glance, this was a much more understandable visitor. Unlike the mysterious Oumuamua, Comet Borisov behaved as a comet should. It had a bright coma, a gaseous tail, and its composition was generally similar to comets from our solar system. Scientists breathed a sigh of relief. Here was a normal interstellar object. No anomalies, no need for alien hypotheses. Just a chunk of ice, ejected from its home system billions of years ago. But even this normal guest brought a surprise. When astronomers studied the gas it was emitting, they found an anomalously high concentration of carbon monoxide, far more than in any comet born around our sun. This meant that Comet Borisov formed in an incredibly cold place, on the distant outskirts of its star system. It was like a time capsule, bringing us a message about the chemical makeup of another distant world. So we had 2 visits. One was completely anomalous, challenging all our preconceptions. The second was more familiar, yet still possessed unique features. Two different messages from the depths of space. They proved that the universe is far more interconnected and far less empty than we thought. That objects from other systems not only can, but will come to visit us. And this brings us to the main point, to the reason we are conducting this investigation. Because right now, as we speak, a third guest is approaching. 3I/A-T-L-A-S. And the initial data shows that it is unlike Oumuamua or Comet Borisov. It is something entirely new, something that is making even the most hardened skeptics glance nervously at their monitor screens. What is actually approaching Earth? To understand this, we need to analyze all the clues in this great cosmic detective story, step by step. Every great investigation begins with a single piece of evidence. A fingerprint at the crime scene, a strange snippet of conversation, a detail that just doesn't fit the overall picture. In our cosmic detective story, it all started on the night of December 28, 2019. That night, the Atlas robotic telescope system, our sleepless guardian scanning the sky for dangerous asteroids, sounded an alarm. But this wasn't an asteroid heading for Earth. It was something far stranger. The first thing that caught scientists' attention was the object's trajectory. Imagine throwing a stone straight up. It will fly, slow down, and fall back due to gravity. This is how all objects in our solar system behave. They orbit the sun in closed ellipses. But this guest, C/2019 Y4 ATLAS, moved differently. Its path was what astronomers call a hyperbola. This isn't just a curve, it's a one-way ticket. The object was moving at such a colossal speed that the sun's gravity couldn't capture it. It could have come from only one place: interstellar space. This was an indisputable fact. Clue number 1. An alien. And this is where it gets interesting. Just as detectives examine evidence under a microscope, astronomers study the light coming from distant objects. To them, light is not just light. It is a message. It is a detailed report that encrypts all the information about the source's chemical composition, temperature, and velocity. This method is called spectral analysis. By breaking light down into a rainbow, scientists see dark lines in it, the unique fingerprints of chemical elements. And when they pointed their spectrographs at ATLAS, the first shock awaited them. By all outward appearances, the object looked like a comet. It was surrounded by a hazy cloud, a coma, which usually indicates evaporating ice. But its light signature, its spectrum, told a completely different story. It more closely resembled the spectrum of a C-type rocky asteroid. These are dark, carbon-rich bodies that formed in the relatively warmer parts of a star system. This was the first glaring contradiction. Before us was an object that looked like an icy comet, but had the chemical passport of a dry rock. How is that possible? It's like meeting a dolphin that breathes like a land animal. It doesn't add up. But the mysteries were only beginning. The detectives began to study the suspect's behavior. They started measuring its brightness. And here, a second surprise awaited them. The brightness of Atlas changed, but it did so in a way unlike ordinary asteroids or comets. Usually, an asteroid rotates, exposing a wider or narrower side to the sun, causing its brightness to change smoothly. But our guest behaved differently. Its brightness changed with a very strange, almost mathematically precise periodicity. It didn't just smoothly increase and decrease. It pulsed, as if someone were switching a giant flashlight on and off at regular intervals. What could cause such an effect? An irregular shape? Possibly. If the object had a very complex angular structure, like some kind of crystal, it could catch the sun's rays with its facets and cast sharp glints as it rotated. But the probability of such a natural body forming is vanishingly small. There was another version. What if different parts of its surface had completely different reflectivity? Imagine a sphere where one half is a mirror and the other is covered in black velvet. As it rotates, it would create a similar pulsating effect. But again, how could such a thing form in nature? And finally, the third clue, which completely baffled everyone. The very coma, the hazy cloud around the object. It was there, but it was ghostly. When a normal comet approaches the sun, its ice begins to boil violently, ejecting powerful jets of gas and dust into space, which we see as a tail. With Atlas, nothing of the sort was observed. No jets, no plumes. The gas and dust appeared around it as if from nowhere, uniformly from all sides, as if its surface wasn't evaporating but slowly and calmly, emitting this glow. So let's put together our dossier. We have an interstellar object. It looks like a comet but has the composition of an asteroid. It pulsates with light with an unnatural regularity, and it is surrounded by a mysterious glow whose source is completely unclear. Each new detail did not clarify the picture, but only added new layers of mystery. Natural explanations were falling apart at the seams. Scientists were at a dead end. This was not just a celestial body. It was a puzzle, sent to us from another star system. And when the usual tools of logic cease to work, the mind inevitably turns to the most daring, most fantastic ideas. The Rama hypothesis, a message in a bottle? What if the key to the mystery of a TLAS has been right in front of our eyes all this time, but we refused to see it? What if we are trying to solve a crossword puzzle using the rules for Sudoku? When all natural explanations, one by one, lead to a dead end, when nature refuses to provide logical answers, true researchers have only one path left, to ask the question that only a few dare to ask. What if this is not a natural object? In 1973, the great science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke published the novel Rendezvous with Rama. In it, he described humanity's encounter with a giant, perfect cylinder that flew into the solar system from the interstellar depths. The scientists in the book puzzled for a long time, trying to understand what kind of asteroid had such a strange shape. It turned out it wasn't an asteroid. It was a ship. A huge, ancient, silent starship built by an unknown civilization. Science fiction, you say? Absolutely. But sometimes, to understand reality, you have to look at it through the eyes of a science fiction writer. Let's imagine for a moment that ATLAS is our Rama, and let's see how this crazy hypothesis explains all the oddities we've discovered. Let's recall the first mystery. The object behaves like a comet, but has the spectrum of a rocky asteroid. For nature, this is a paradox. But for technology? There's no paradox here. The hull of an interstellar probe or ship would most likely be made not of ice, but of durable refractory materials rich in carbon and metals, exactly what we see in its spectrum. And the mysterious cloud around it? It's not necessarily evaporating ice. It could be anything. A cloud of microscopic repair drones, the remnants of the working fluid from a plasma engine that shut down before entering the system, or even an atmospheric leak from a hull punctured by a micrometeoroid. From an engineering standpoint, a rocky composition and a gas coma can coexist perfectly well. Now for the second oddity, the unnaturally regular pulsations of light. We tried to explain this by a complex shape or bizarre spots on the surface. But if this is an artificial object, the explanation becomes frighteningly simple. What if these are not just glints? What if we are seeing its systems at work? They could be giant solar panels turning towards the sun at a precise angle to gather energy for reawakening. It could be the work of a thermal regulation system, opening and closing giant radiator shutters. Or, and this thought sends shivers down the spine, it could be a communication session, a coded signal, a beacon sending data to its home system, using the entire surface of the object as a transmitter. A mathematically precise impulse is not a sign of nature. It is a sign of intelligence. It is the signature of technology. And finally, the third clue. the ghostly coma that glows uniformly from all sides, with no visible sources. For a comet, this is nonsense. But for a starship, it could be a protective field, an energy shield that protects the hull from cosmic dust during a long journey and which began to glow faintly upon interacting with our solar wind. Imagine an invisible force cocoon that suddenly became visible. This perfectly explains why we don't see any jets of gas from the surface. The gas isn't erupting outwards. It's appearing at the very boundary of this field. All these disparate, contradictory facts suddenly fall into a single, logical, and coherent picture if we allow for just one thing. A TLAS was built by someone. We are not looking at a space rock, but a silent mechanism that obeys not the laws of nature, but a program embedded within it. This hypothesis explains everything. And you know what's most striking? We were already on the verge of this conclusion when we encountered Oumuamua. Professor Avi Loeb of Harvard stated directly that its anomalous acceleration was best explained by the presence of a solar sail. At the time, the scientific community considered him an eccentric. But now, a second strange guest arrives, and again it doesn't fit into any framework. Maybe it's time to listen. Of course, this is just a hypothesis. The most daring of all, it makes us feel like characters in a science fiction movie. But this is the essence of science, to test the most incredible assumptions. Because if it's true, if a messenger from another civilization has indeed arrived, then this is the greatest discovery in all of human history, and we are its witnesses. In science, as in any good detective story, there is one golden rule. It's called Occam's razor. It sounds complicated, but its essence is ridiculously simple. The simplest explanation that accounts for all the facts is most likely the correct one. Before declaring mysterious lights in the sky to be an alien ship, one must first prove that it is not a plane, a weather balloon, or a satellite. Before calling Atlas an artificial probe, we are obliged to consider all, absolutely all, possible natural scenarios, even the most exotic ones. So, let's forget about starships and solar sails for a moment. Let's take off the rose-tinted glasses and look at our guest through the eyes of the most severe prosecutor. Our task is not to believe in a miracle, but to find a sober, materialistic explanation for it. The first and main point of indictment against the alien hypothesis is the contradiction between its appearance and composition. The object looks like a comet, but its spectrum is that of an asteroid. For the supporters of Rama, this is a sign of technology. And for a skeptic, it's a sign that we are dealing with a completely new, previously unseen type of celestial body. We are, after all, talking about a visitor from another star system. Who said that everything there must be arranged the same way as here? Imagine a very old comet that has wandered through the interstellar void for billions of years. During this time, cosmic radiation and microscopic dust have created a thick, durable crust of complex organics and carbon on its surface. A kind of sarcophagus. On the outside, it's a dark, dead rock, which gives us the spectrum of a C-type asteroid. But inside, beneath this protective shell, pristine ice is still hidden. And so this object flies into our system and begins to approach the sun. The heat slowly penetrates the dark crust and begins to heat what lies beneath. The ice doesn't boil violently, as on a normal comet, but slowly evaporates, sublimates. Gas seeps through pores in the crust and creates that very ghostly coma. This perfectly explains both the dual nature of the object and the absence of powerful jets from its surface. It's not a starship. It's an invisible comet, or if you like, a cosmic pie, with an icy filling and a burnt crust. Now let's deal with the second clue, the strange, regular pulsations of light. Could it really be a signal? Or is there a simpler explanation? There is, and it's far more dramatic. What if Atlas isn't sending us signals, but is falling apart? Imagine what happens to an ice cube when you drop it into warm water. It starts to crack. The same thing is happening to our guest. The sharp temperature difference between its icy interior and its sun-heated surface creates enormous internal stress. The object begins to crack from the inside. From time to time, small pieces break off. And at that moment, for a few hours, a fresh, untouched icy surface is exposed beneath the dark crust. This clean ice reflects sunlight tens of times better than the old dark crust. There's your flash. We are not seeing the work of engines, but the death throes of an ancient comet. It is literally disintegrating before our eyes. This theory not only explains the pulsations, but also predicts that the object should have become progressively brighter over time, and then, perhaps, completely disintegrate. Finally, the third clue, the uniform coma. The hypothesis of slow destruction explains this as well. If gas is not erupting from a few active points, but is slowly seeping through the entire surface, and the surface itself is constantly shedding microscopic dust, then the cloud around the object will be an almost perfect sphere. It's not a protective field. It's a burial shroud that the comet is weaving for itself. So what do we have in the end? On one hand, we have a beautiful, imagination-stirring story about an alien ship. It explains everything but requires us to believe in the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence. On the other hand, we have a tragic but entirely scientific story about a rare type of interstellar comet that could not withstand its rendezvous with our sun and began to break apart. This version no less elegantly explains all the same facts, but it does not require us to make any fantastic assumptions. Which one is correct? Occam's razor mercilessly points to the second. The simplest explanation here is not a ship, but a dying comet. But this is not the end of our investigation. This is merely the clash of two great theories. And in any detective story, there comes a moment when the arguments must cease. A moment when irrefutable proof takes the stage. Imagine a courtroom. In one corner sit the enthusiastic dreamers believing in Rama, in the touch of another intelligence. In the other, the skeptics, armed with Occam's razor and a belief in the unshakable laws of physics. And in the center, in the witness stand, is a tiny point of light flying through the void millions of kilometers away. Soon, this point must answer the ultimate question: ship or comet, intelligence or nature. As Atlas drew closer, the heavy artillery was brought to bear. Humanity's greatest eyes turned in its direction. The Hubble Space Telescope, the legendary hunter of the universe's secrets, paused its study of distant galaxies and aimed its mirror at our guest. The most powerful ground-based observatories in Chile and Hawaii awaited clear nights to join this unprecedented scientific chase. This was the moment for which such instruments are created, a moment when history is made in real time. Both theories made vastly different predictions. If it was a ship, strong and reliable, the close approach to the sun shouldn't have harmed it. It might change course, activate systems, but its structure would remain intact. But if it was a dying comet, as the skeptics predicted, its fate was sealed. The growing heat of our star was destined to tear it apart. The death rattle flashes we had observed would be merely a prelude to a grand finale. The first images from Hubble arrived in early April 2020. The world held its breath. The images were not perfectly sharp, but they already showed something strange. Atlas was no longer a single bright point. It had elongated. It resembled a misty dumbbell. What was this? Was the starship deploying its structures, preparing for a maneuver, or were these the first signs of destruction? The tension reached its peak. Then, on April 20th, Hubble took the decisive shot. It used all its power, all its resolving capability, to peer into the very heart of the mysterious cloud. When the image arrived on Earth and appeared on the monitors in the control center, a silence fell over the room. Then someone said, "My God, there's more than one." The image showed no ship, no perfect cylinder of Rama, no sleek hull of an alien probe. Instead, at the center of the misty coma, like shards of a broken vase, floated several fragments, two large ones and a scattering of smaller ones. Occam's razor had delivered its crushing blow. The skeptics were right. We were not witnessing the arrival of a messenger, but a cosmic catastrophe in slow motion. Our mysterious guest, our enigmatic visitor, had ceased to exist as a single entity before our very eyes. Subsequent observations over the next few days only confirmed this picture. On April 23rd, Hubble counted more than 30 separate pieces, each no larger than a house. They were slowly drifting apart, continuing to glow faintly in the sun's rays. It was a mesmerizing and, at the same time, somewhat sad spectacle, as if we had watched a rare exotic butterfly that had flown into our window from a distant land simply turn to dust at the touch of our world. The spectral analysis of the newly exposed fragments delivered the final verdict. The light reflected from their fresh fractures carried the clear signature of water ice, the very ice that was not visible under the ancient carbon crust. The invisible comet theory was confirmed 100%. All the mysteries were solved. The pulsations were the flashes from breaking fragments. The dual nature was explained by the pi structure, and the ghostly coma was simply a cloud of dust and gas from a slow but inevitable destruction. The dream of Rama was dead, but did the mystery die with it? Number. In fact, it was just beginning. Yes, it wasn't a ship, but what kind of comet was it? Why was it so different from ours? Where did it come from? And what can it tell us about its lost world? Unmasking the object is not the end of the investigation. It is merely the beginning of a new, even deeper chapter in the story of our acquaintance with the universe. The ghost of another world, what we learned from ATLAS, forget about alien ships. The reality turned out to be far more subtle. C/2019 Y4, Atlas, was not a message from an intelligent civilization. It was a message from the universe itself. It was a time capsule, a relic from another star system, so ancient and fragile that our very existence proved fatal to it. Let's piece together everything we've learned and create a final portrait of this cosmic wanderer. So what do we know for sure? Atlas was a comet, but not an ordinary one. It was a representative of a completely new class of objects that scientists now call fragile comets. Its structure was incredibly porous and loose. The density of its material was so low that if you held a brick-sized piece of it in your hand, it would weigh no more than a bag of sugar. Imagine not a solid block of ice, but rather a tightly packed snowball mixed with cosmic soot. It was this extreme fragility that caused its demise. It was simply not prepared to meet a heat source as powerful as our sun. Its composition was also unique. It wasn't just frozen water. Analysis showed it was a true cocktail of frozen gases, water ice, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, all held together by particles of carbon dust. The same dark crust that had misled everyone for so long was not an artificial shell, but the result of billions of years of exposure to cosmic rays in interstellar space. This cosmic sunburn is what gave it the appearance of an asteroid. So where did it come from? Calculations of its trajectory showed that it came from the direction of the constellation Puppies. But this is just a direction, not a precise address. Most likely, Atlas was born at the dawn of the formation of some distant, nameless star. It was part of a giant cloud of gas and dust from which planets were born. But it was unlucky. The gravitational games of giant planets in its home system, like a cosmic catapult, threw it into an eternal journey across the galaxy. It wandered in this void for hundreds of millions, perhaps even billions of years. During this time, it crossed thousands of light years, survived supernova explosions, and passed through gas nebulas. It was a silent witness to cosmic history. And then, by pure chance, its path crossed ours. It entered the solar system carrying information about the chemical composition of that distant world where it was born. But its journey had come to an end. The heat of the sun, which for us is a source of life, became its death sentence. Its fragile structure could not hold. It broke into dozens of small fragments, which then, most likely, completely evaporated, turning into a cloud of dust and gas. It left no craters or debris behind. It simply dissolved into our system, leaving only a trail of data on the hard drives of our telescopes. So, what was it? Atlas was a ghost, the ghost of another planetary system. Its visit proved several incredibly important things to us. First, interstellar space is not empty. It is filled with wanderers like this. They are a kind of cosmic bee, transferring material from one star to another. Perhaps it was comets like this that brought water and organic molecules to the young Earth billions of years ago, from which life later emerged. Second, the visit of ATLAS showed us how diverse the worlds around us can be. We are used to thinking of our comets and asteroids as a kind of standard. But it turns out that in other systems, objects with completely different properties can be born, fragile as snowflakes and as ancient as the galaxy itself. And third, this story became a brilliant example of how science works. We saw the clash of bold hypotheses and hard facts. We watched as a coherent and beautiful theory emerged from the chaos of contradictory data. Yes, we had to give up the dream of meeting an alien ship, but in return, we received something no less valuable: pure knowledge. We looked over the horizon and saw that the universe is even more amazing and unpredictable than we thought. So what's the bottom line? Is it disappointment that Atlas turned out to be not an alien ship, but just a fragile comet? If you think so, you're missing the main point. The story of this wanderer, like the stories of its predecessors, Oumuamua and Borisov, is not a story of unfulfilled hopes. It is the story of the discovery of a completely new reality. We have lived our whole lives in a house, thinking that all its windows and doors were tightly shut, and suddenly, we discovered that this is not so, that the windows are wide open and a fresh wind from other unknown worlds is bursting into our rooms. Each of these interstellar guests is one such window. Oumuamua showed us that there can be objects in the universe with properties completely incomprehensible to us, forcing us to ask the most daring questions. Comet Borisov brought us the chemical composition of another planetary system, like an exotic fruit from a distant land. And ATLAS, it told us the most tragic and most important story. It showed us that somewhere out there, worlds are born so different from ours that their creations simply cannot survive near our star. It was proof of the incredible diversity of the universe. These 3 visits in less than 3 years have completely changed our understanding of the solar system. It is no longer an isolated island in the vast ocean of space. It is a bustling port, a cosmic crossroads through which travelers from other stellar harbors constantly pass. We simply don't notice most of them. They are too small and faint. But now that we know they exist, we are beginning a real hunt. New, incredibly powerful telescopes, such as the Vera C. Rubin Observatory, are already under construction. Their main task is not just to wait for random visits, but to conduct a systematic search, to patrol our cosmic borders. They will be able to detect dozens, perhaps even hundreds, of such objects every year. We are on the threshold of an era of interstellar archaeology. We will collect these visitors, study their composition, and reconstruct their history. Each one will be a key to understanding how planets are born and die around other stars. And who knows what the next guest will bring? Maybe it will be made of substances we have never seen. Maybe it will bring with it complex organic molecules, the very building blocks of life, confirming the hypothesis that life travels across the universe on comets. And maybe, one day, the very object that will silence even the most die-hard skeptics will arrive. The one that turns out to be neither a comet nor an asteroid. The one that will, after all, be Rama. The story of 3I/ATLAS taught us the most important thing. We must be prepared for anything. We must look at the sky not with the expectation of a miracle, but with the curiosity of a researcher. The universe is writing its great book, and the pages of this book are flying towards us through the void. Our task is simply to learn how to read them. And this investigation was just the reading of one short but incredibly important chapter. The entire library awaits us.